A strong introduction section is really important because it sets the stage for why the research project needs to be done in the first place. If you don't do a good job, you will get these comments from the reviewers. The research question is not novel or not interesting, or similar studies have been done before. Or worse, they completely misunderstand the goal of your research study, almost as if they did not read the paper. Hi, this is Dr. Gia, and today I'm going to talk about the biggest mistakes seen in the introduction section and what to do instead. I've made these mistakes many times, and I've seen similar mistakes when I review papers, so I want you to avoid them. Be sure to stick around to the very end because I have a ninja tip on how to write your introduction section beautifully. Mistake number 1, writing the introduction section like a literature review. Here, the authors provide too much background information about the general research field. I want you to think about this. The introduction section usually takes about 10% of the whole paper, so you only have about 3 to 4 paragraphs to convince your reviewer why your research is important. So it needs to be straight to the point. Think about it like an elevator pitch. The goal of the introduction section is to define the problem and research gap and explain how your research is here to answer or solve the problem. So what do you need to do instead? Define the general problem, then explain what has been done before, why hasn't it been solved, and what narrow problem still remains, and finally, how your research will attempt to answer the question or solve the narrow problem. Mistake number 2, assuming that the reviewers and readers are experts in the field. The issue here is when we assume that somebody knows our topic really well, we tend to skip the middle bits. So if you're assuming that the reviewers see the issue at hand, you do not explain the implication or the application of the problem well. And the thing is, depending on the scope of the journal, the reviewer and editor may not know the nuances in your research field. And so be sure to walk the readers through the problem and the research gap. Mistake number 3, not addressing potential objections. Research paper is an extension of the scientific conversation in your field. So if you don't know these objections, the reviewers who are experts in your field will think that you do not really know your research field well, so you actually lose trust. In every research area, there will be certain assumptions or conventions, ebbs and flows in terms of interest. For example, what the field believes is the next best thing, or it could be the solutions that are now out of favor. If you are aware of a potential big objection to your research, try your best to address them. The further you are from the convention, the more legwork you need to convince others that your research question is important. So I'm going to give you some examples of potential objections. In 2021, I was asked to review many papers related to COVID-19 and acute kidney injuries. And these were the common comments provided by various reviewers. For example, hasn't this research been done before? Or why now? Why this population? Isn't the solution obvious? So why do research on this? The thing is, the scientific community in the kidney world at that time has seen so many similar studies, so they were no longer interested in it. So if the authors are aware of these objections, the smart thing to do is to give a lot of evidence on how their research is different or how this particular study will change the management. I know conducting a research project is an overwhelming process, so I made the Idea to Paper blueprint for you. This blueprint takes you through a 7-step process from idea generation to paper submission. So be sure to get a copy by clicking at the link below. Mistake number 4. The scope of the introduction does not match the discussion section. So when you write a paper, the breadth of the introduction section or the high-level concepts mentioned in the section needs to match the breadth of the discussion section. So sometimes I see this mistake a lot. The introduction is so sparse that the author buries the main concept only in the discussion section, almost like a surprise. So remember, this is a research paper, not a novel. Academic readers have no patience for this last-minute review. The last thing you want is the reviewer missing the key point and not seeing the value of the paper, and thus risking them rejecting your paper. Or the opposite happens. In the introduction section, the author talks about large goals and large claims about how your research can change a field, but the research question is much narrower. So your discussion section will be limited to your scope of the research question, and then you end up over-promising or under-delivering. Again, you're setting yourself up for a paper rejection. So now for the ninja tip. how do you frame your introduction section then? My favorite way is to frame it in a problem-solution layer. You start broad and then narrow it down. I've tried this method many times and have also taught many of my mentees this method. There is a big problem. Researchers have found some solutions, but these solutions are not perfect and new problems arise. So now our research aims to solve this new problem. So it's a problem, solution, problem, solution. So if you're ever stuck with what to write in the introduction section, think about this problem solution layer. This is the fastest way to gain clarity. Also, I encourage you to find a few research papers, articles in your field, and start reading the introduction section. Go see if you can identify the problem solution layer. The ones that are well written and easy to understand are typically framed in this problem solution layer. And so once you can see this pattern, you can't unsee it anymore. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time with more academic writing tips.